If you apply all the different little tricks in total body power, like wind sprints and the cross training and the nutrition, you can get fit quicker with less time spent. It's very effective. It's worked for athletes and it can work for you. And I don't care. I don't care if you're 200 pounds overweight and all you can do is walk. Total body power can make you fitter in less time.
Welcome to Colbert Bailey's Total Body Power, brought to you by Guthrie Rinker Fitness. This is Total Body Basics. In this tape, Colbert will reveal fun facts about your body's physiology, how to reduce stress and restore your natural energy, things your doctor should know but doesn't, his secrets to lifelong health, and much more. Now, let's get started with Total Body Basics.
This tape is probably my favorite. It's going to be all about physiological biochemistry, so I advise you just to turn it off because it'll probably drive you crazy. Seriously, it's the background material for all the other tapes. In other words, if you do some of the things that I would urge people to do, how to exercise, how to eat, but a lot of times in watching the other tapes, you'll probably say, I wonder what his reason for this is. You might wonder what the background is. So this tape can be pretty heavy stuff. Biochemistry can get pretty awful. But like I say, it really has the answers to everything. And now it starts with the chemistry of muscle. It's interesting that in graduate school and when people go to medical school, they study the physiology of the brain, you know, and they have all this biochemistry about the liver, and it goes on and on forever. And it's almost an afterthought. When you're doctor, your MD in medical school, it's almost an afterthought to study the physiology, the biochemistry of what happens in muscle. I don't know why exactly, but it just kind of gets shortchanged. And yet, when you think about it, and when you get as far into this as I've been, you realize that muscle chemistry is the most important part of your whole body. See, for one thing, the body's made of muscle. In men's bodies are about 40% muscle. That's almost half, right? Almost half. Women have a little more fat, a little less muscle. They're about 33% muscle. But still, that's a third of your body, ladies, right? A third of your body. So you think, whoa. Now, what happens is that, let's say you eat, and you think, okay, and you put this spoonful of mashed potatoes in your face, and down it goes, and you think, okay, where is it going to get burned up? Well, how much of that mashed potato do you think is going to be burned by your hair? So, like, say someone has really long hair. Do they burn more mashed potatoes than someone else? It's ridiculous, right? Okay. Or you could look at it here. Here's another way. Look at it another way. How much from the mashed potatoes are burned by your skin, or your liver, or your toenails, or something? And what I'm trying to do is eliminate parts of your body and get you to realize that when you put food in your face and it goes down and you digest it and you think, I hope I don't get fat. Hope my body burns it up, metabolizes it, how about like that? You hope that happens. Well, it ain't going to happen in your skin, bro, and it ain't going to happen in your hair. It's going to happen in your muscles, even bones. Even though a lot of the body's made of bones, but bones, they don't do much. They're kind of there. They have metabolism inside because otherwise they wouldn't be able to repair if we broke one. Obviously, they're alive, but the number of calories they burn is really very small, okay? Does that make sense, everybody? So muscle is it. Muscle is it. So what we got to do is we got to say, okay, let's go down inside a muscle like the one on the arm that men are always showing off. So you go down in a bicep and you say, okay, what happens down in there? How does it work? And remembering that here's just one, but if I added up all the muscle on my body, 40% of my body would be made out of muscle. And you think, whoa. Now, here's the bottom line of all that. It means that if you have a little change, a tiny change in the physiology, the biochemistry, or the big word, metabolism, a little change in the metabolism of your muscle amounts to a big change in the overall metabolism of your body. So if you say, oh, all right, all I'm trying to do is motivate you to listen, right? I'm hoping that you're saying, oh, now I know why he likes to talk about muscle chemistry all the time. It's because that's where it happens. That's what makes your body work, really, all right? So go down inside the muscle. In fact, I've drawn a picture here on the board of a muscle cell, and this is supposed to be a capillary going by, okay? And you know that when we eat carbohydrates, starch, breads, potatoes, I don't care. But if you eat a potato, you digest it, it goes into your blood as glucose. So even though it's called potato starch, it becomes blood sugar or blood glucose, okay? Now the same thing is for fats. If I put butter, margarines, mayonnaise, oils, okay, different kinds of oils and fats, when I digest those in my body, they become little fatty acid molecules, and those travel through my blood. So on my picture here, I've drawn glucose up here, okay? And the glucose comes down along in the blood, and I've drawn fatty acids over here in the blood. Well, the fatty acids go down. This is one muscle cell that I drew here, just one muscle cell, okay? And they're kind of like wiffle balls, and they got a million little holes in each muscle cell, so that when your capillary goes by, nutrition, sugar, fats, vitamins, minerals, etc., can trickle out of the capillary down into the muscle cells. Does that make sense? That's called food, okay? So here's the muscle cell, and here comes some glucose, and it goes down inside, and by a series of enzyme steps, you don't have to learn that right yet, but just for a second, there's a series of enzymatic reactions. Big word for proteins, all right? But the sugar's burned up, and that gives you energy so you can run or punch somebody or whatever you want to do. And then fats go down in there. All right, now here's the point. Here's the point. We burn in our muscles 2 different kinds of fuel at the same time. Now you think about that for a minute, okay? If you take a car, for example. If I drove up to your house tomorrow morning in this new car, and I said, this car has got a gas tank and a diesel tank, you'd think I was crazy, wouldn't you? Because cars are either gas cars or diesel cars. They don't burn 2 kinds of fuel. And yet, what if I said, no, this is a brand new car, just came from Japan, and it burns gas and diesel at the same time? You know, you'd be pretty impressed, wouldn't you? Okay, well, what I'm saying is that the muscle down in your body does the same thing. It burns 2 completely different kinds of fuel. It burns carbohydrates, called glucose, in the blood, and it burns fats. Now, right off you say, whoa, that could lead to some possibilities. And you know, and if you have a problem with getting fat right off the bat, you should be thinking, oh, I wonder if my muscle prefers to burn sugar to fat, and that's the reason I'm fat. Do you see the logic there? And that, in fact, is what we're going to lead up to, is that muscle burns 2 different kinds of fuels, but one of them is hard to burn, the fat, and the sugar is easy to burn. And I'll tell you why. If you look back at my diagram here, you see these enzymes on this side. There are little proteins that I referred to, those little wriggly lines, okay? Well, those little proteins, they take a sugar molecule and they sort of go click, click, click and take it apart. It's almost like taking a match, you know, and putting it underneath something and making it happen like that. Okay, well, again, if you look at the diagram, those little enzymes that take apart a sugar molecule and give you energy, okay, it's called metabolism of sugar. Okay, those little enzymes, they just burn any old time, doesn't make a difference, no problem. But the ones on the other side over here, the ones that burn up the fat, they are what we call oxygen-dependent enzymes. Big word. All that says, let me talk about a fire for a minute. You know how you can take a candle and you can put a little snuffer, those little metal hat things, and put the candle out? I know my father used to love to do that at the table, put candle, you know what I mean? You could snuff it out. Or you could have a fire burning, and if you had a big thick blanket, you could go, and you could lay it over a fire and put it out. What's that called? That's called smothering the fire. Why does the fire go out? Put a snuffer on a candle. Why does it go out? Boom, lack of oxygen, right? You can snuff a person out with a plastic bag because they don't get any oxygen. It sounds pretty gross, but anyway, you can do that. Now, the point I'm trying to make is this. When things are burning or metabolizing, similar word, okay, sugars and fats, when fats burn, they have to have oxygen just like every other kind of fire you've ever heard of. But sugar burns, pay attention, sugar burns in your muscle with no oxygen. It burns anaerobically. Now all of a sudden we start to get a neat background, don't we, as to what's aerobic exercise and what's all that stuff that's modern in America today, okay? If you're jogging and you can talk at the same time that you're jogging, or say you're walking fast, but anyway, you're exercising somehow, and you're going along. If you can talk to me at the same time that you're doing it, you're aerobic. That's what aerobic is all about. It means that the muscle here, here, here on your body, whichever one you're using, it means that that muscle at that time is getting enough oxygen so that the muscle says, ah, thank goodness there's enough oxygen in here, and the muscle's burning fat and sugar at the same time. So aerobic exercise is an exercise, any exercise in where the muscle says, ah, good, I can burn two fuels at the same time. Now, in contrast to that, when you look up here, what happens when you get running a little too fast, you know, and you're breathing like that, and you really can't get your breath, okay? When you're jogging along like that, the fat-burning enzymes, these little proteins down here, we always make a joke and we say this is a union. You know, this is the fat-burning union. These boys here, they say, if you're going to run like that, you can do it without us. We're going out on strike, okay? These guys go out on strike and they say, we ain't going to function no more, bro. In other words, you're running anaerobic. In other words, when you're running along and you're like that, you can hardly breathe, your muscle says, I'm going to burn sugar only. All right, now right off, even if I stopped right now, I stop, end of tape, I would hope that you would have learned one thing that would change you forever. You'd say, anytime that I'm exercising aerobically, by definition, it means that I'm not out of breath, or I really should say the muscle is not out of breath. And the second thing you should say is, it means my muscle's burning fat. So if you got a fat problem, you know, if you got too much fat, like most of us Americans do, and you'd like to get rid of some of it, if you go out and sprint, zoom, you're running down the road as fast as you can go, like pretend you were in basic training in the military or something, they're making you run, and you're gasping, you're not burning any fat, okay? Basic contention made, everybody got it? Makes a big difference, doesn't it? Now, that's only the beginning. I hope I haven't left you behind, because you say, all right, I can use that. Now, the next thing you say is, okay, go back to the drawing, because here's the next thing about it that's fascinating to me. You see this glucose I've drawn coming along here in the blood? Well, it goes inside the muscle, and up at the top up here, I've written a bunch of G's, G, hook to G, hook to G, okay? What that represents is stored glucose. In other words, when you eat any kind of potatoes, bread, or a candy bar for that matter, anything with sugar in it, okay, it goes to your muscles, and your muscles say, well, he's not running right now. Why don't we just store this? Maybe he'll get up and run after a while. So the muscle takes the glucose molecules, and I just wrote it on my diagram as a G for glucose, and you hook the glucose molecules together in this long chain, kind of like a daisy chain or something you might hang on your Christmas tree or something, okay? Okay, well, it's called glycogen. It's just a big fancy word. It kind of rhymes, but it doesn't really. Glucose, glycogen, a weird kind of rhyme, okay? Well, glycogen is a stored form of sugar, and it's right inside the muscle. And you say that right away, again, turn off the tape right now, go to sleep, and when you're in your CPs tonight, your head will all of a sudden you'll wake up and say, oh, I think I got his point. Sugar is stored right inside the muscle. Where's fat stored? Is fat stored right inside your muscle? We all know, don't we? No, it ain't stored in the muscle. It's stored on the hips or on the belly if you're a guy, right? So, what that means is that when you start to exercise, the muscle says, oh, I guess he's exercising. I will use the fuel, the sugar, the glycogen, whatever you want to call it, that I've marked on my diagram up here. I will use that right now because it's right here in the muscle. So sugar's like a quick energy fuel. It's the fuel that we can use right away. You start to run, and the muscle says, all right, and it's got the sugar right in there. But what you want is to get rid of your fat. You say, but Covert, that's not my problem. My problem is the grease. How do I get it? Okay, so you're jogging along, and your muscle's burning sugar. Well, you keep jogging, you know, and after a while, you jog 5 or 10 minutes, and the muscle says, we are going to run out of this sugar because the next major point is, faites attention, the sugar can only be stored a little bit in your muscle. You can't store very much in there, all right? If you put an exercise to your legs, to your big muscles in your body, then the sugar in there runs out relatively quickly because there isn't very much. So you're jogging along, burning up sugar, and then at some point, your muscle says, oh, we're going to run out. And it picks up the telephone and calls your left hip. And it says to the left hip, you're not going to believe this. He's running. okay? And the left hip probably says, oh, he'll sit down, particularly if you haven't been exercising in a long time. Now, the point is that you start to tap the fat fuel, but fat is stored remotely from the muscle. And so we got the problem of, even if we can get you to exercise, we want you to exercise right, and we actually want you to exercise day after day after day. You know, and that's the reason that we push the exercise so hard, is because only if you do it repeatedly does the muscle make that phone call. I know that sounds silly, but anyway, it's a chemical thing. But it's like a phone call to the fat, and the fat says, oh, and the fat on your body starts to release fat to send it to the muscle quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. People who are really fit, the people who would get on our program and they go for it and they go for it and they go for it, the people who get really fit start to release fat almost the instant they get up out of a chair and start to go do some kind of exercise. Whereas people who are really kind of fat and haven't exercised for a long time, even if they do go out to exercise, the fat doesn't release right away. Now that could be discouraging, right? You could say, oh, the heck with this. Don't be discouraged, because the point is we can teach you how to exercise effectively. That's the point of my whole program, after all, is to teach you how to exercise effectively so that you can release that fat quicker and quicker and quicker, and it doesn't become this horrible thing. Come to find out, the aerobic exercise that we've been pushing, cramming it down people's throats for a long time, the aerobic exercise that we've been pushing can be modified now. I mean, after all, it's been around for 15 years. And we can show you in the other tapes, when you plug them in, how to do it more effectively so that this chemistry that I talk about starts to work for you instead of against you. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. Okay, now the next thing you have to do is you have to say, all right, I got it. My muscles burn fat and sugar, but they don't burn the fat if I'm anaerobic. The word an in front of something means without, doesn't it? Aerobic means oxygen, an means without, so it means without oxygen, all right? Everybody got that? Anaerobic exercise is when you're gasping, okay? Now, if you look at my diagram again, I've put up here, or I will put up here now if I have to, but the point is that when we burn sugar inside the muscle cell, if we burn sugar anaerobically without oxygen, a weird thing happens. It only burns part way and it spits out this waste product, lactic acid, which I'll write up in here, okay? Lactic acid is that burning sensation that you get when you do a fast run, or I'll bet you've felt it when you've pedaled a bicycle. You pedal a bicycle along, if you're on the flats, then you're okay. But if you come to a hill, you know how you can get that acidy feeling burn in your thigh really fast? Okay, well that burning sensation in your thigh is the lactic acid starting to build up, to accumulate in there, and it's a sign, remember this, it's a sign that you're anaerobic, burning sugar only. Now people say, oh, well then I must never do that. I have fat, I want to get rid of fat, that's all I'm interested in, so I must never get out of breath. That's not the point. If you think that, you're missing it. Watch the biochemistry here, because what the whole point is that we can show you is that if we can get you to do a little bit of that up the hill stuff on your bicycle once in a while, where you get lactic acid in your muscle, if you do a little bit of that and then go back to what normally would be called an aerobic exercise, where you can breathe and you can talk and everything, if you do a little bit of the fast stuff, and then a lot of the slow, a little bit of the fast, a lot of the slow, that what happens is that it triggers the muscle to make those phone calls to your fat cells more and more often. What you want is a lot of phone calls from your muscle to your fat cells saying, hey, 1 minute he's doing this, the next minute he's doing that. But mostly what he does is he jogs slowly or he bicycles slowly aerobically, so please send down a lot of fat. Am I making sense? Okay? All right, now, you say, all right, what kind of exercises are the best kind then? Well, first place, the best exercise is the one you'll do. So don't get too crazy about, oh, I must do this exercise because the man with the PhD says this is the best exercise. That's hogwash. The best exercise is the one you'll do. If I tell you the best exercise and then you don't do it, what good is it, right? So that's part of the program. We got to get something that's fun for you. But there are some general guidelines. For example, swimming in the water where the water's holding you up, for some chemical reason we're still not absolutely sure of, doesn't make you burn off the fat very much. There's something about swimming that the muscle doesn't pick up the phone and call your fat cells and say, ship out to Greece, the man on to swim, see? We don't know why. All we know is that seals are fat and walruses are fat and whales are fat. Okay, those are mammals just like you and me. And they swim and they swim and they swim and they swim and they stay fat, don't they? Now, I'm not saying it's wrong, but what we're saying is don't use swimming exclusively as a fat-burning thing, even though you say, well, I get in the water and I swim aerobically, just like you said, Covert. And I say, yeah, but you didn't listen to part 3 or whatever we're on now, which is that when you're swimming, the muscle don't make the phone call, and we still not absolutely sure why, okay? Now you say, well, are there exercises where the muscle does make the phone call? Yeah. And this is, I got to tell you something you're going to hate. You're going to hate me. There's nothing like running. There's something about it. We find bicycling is good and rowing machines and all those machines, everything is good, but there's nothing like getting up on your feet and running. So you say, okay, the worst exercise as far as burning off fat is swimming. And the best exercise about burning off fat is running. And you say, okay, now you've told me the worst and the best, what's the practical thing to do? And the practical thing, you're going to love this. The practical thing is to swim 2, 3, 4 times a week if you can, because it makes you incredibly fit, it trains muscle, it does all kind of neat things. But then combine that by getting out of the swimming pool and do something on land, so that when you're on land doing either jog or a walk, if you're really heavy now and you can't jog, then you're doing a walk. But something of that movement, the walk, jog, run movement, when you're doing that movement, and the muscle makes those phone calls to your fat cells, well, if you've been swimming for 3 or 4 days, then the muscles are all ready, and you get out on land, and they make the phone calls very, very quickly. Does that make any sense at all? Okay. In other words, it's the perfect combination, because you don't ever get hurt swimming. You don't very often hear people say, oh, I sprained my ankle swimming. Okay. So you go swimming, and it's wonderful. It doesn't hurt your joints. You can do it even if you're tired and blah, 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 blah. It's a wonderful exercise, but get out of the water and do a land exercise once a week, and then you get the benefits of the two put together. Now, if you go back to the muscle cell one last time here, the whole point of this, to put it down into simple terms now, is muscle in your body is where biochemistry is at, and that's the same word as saying it's where metabolism is at. People, you know how people say, oh, I'm getting fat, and I don't eat very much. I think my metabolism is slowing down. Haven't you heard that? We all hear that all the time. They say, my metabolism's slowing down. Drive me crazy, because it's not their metabolism slowing down. It's they are slowing down. Their bodies are slowing. Get up, get off your butt, and do some decent exercise, which we'll get into in the other tapes. This is just background, and we'll show you how to do it right and everything. But as you're doing it, think back on the stuff I'm talking about on this one, which is chemistry, metabolism, all that big fancy stuff. And basically, as the muscle works and works and works and works, it becomes a better metabolizer of fat and sugar and fat and sugar and fat and sugar. Now, you see this diagram that I drew? Let me talk one more time here. The enzymes on the side where you burn the fat, those are proteins. You know how, all right, I should have said this before. You know how if you have a broken arm and you put a cast on and you walk around like this for a month, you know how then they take the cast off and the arm is kind of wizened up. They call it atrophy, don't they? If you don't use it, you lose it. You've heard that one before. Okay, if you don't use muscle, okay. Well, these enzymes in here that burn up fats are proteins also, like muscle, okay? If you don't use them, you lose them. The result is, if you haven't been exercising very much aerobically for the last bunch of years, you're sitting around and driving to work and all that stuff, you don't exercise very much, what happens is that these enzymes go down very fast. For some reason or other, when we were produced, when God made us, God said, I am going to make them so that the fat-burning enzymes, if they don't use them, down they go. They go very, very fast. So you lose your, what we call the butter-burning enzymes really fast, and then you become a person who doesn't burn fat. You know how people say, well, I don't know what it is, but I don't burn off my fat like other people? Now you know why. It has to do with the loss of enzymes in your muscle cells. Now, You say, oh, that's depressing, right? It's really depressing. You think, I want to die, just forget. But, like, you know that business about, I got good news and I've got bad news. Well, that was the bad news. The good news is that if you do start to do the exercise, and we're going to show you how to do the program just right in the other tapes, not this one, okay? In the other tapes, we'll show you how to do it just right in order to make those enzymes grow back up again. They're what scientists call inducible. It means you can induce them to grow and come back up. And as those enzymes grow and grow and grow and grow, you burn fats better and better. As we say, you burn butter better and better and become a better butter burner. If that doesn't twist your tongue, nothing will, okay? Okay, we used to give out little pins with BBB on them when people were really successful. They'd exercise and eat right, and they'd lose a bunch of weight, and they'd say, you know, I can eat anything I want now. It's because they trained and they trained and they trained and they trained. And you'll get to the point where your body says, ah, I'm now a better butter burner. And we will give them the little 3B pin. Okay, after you exercise, you have to think, what's happening in here after exercise? And in all the tapes, we'll make a big point over and over and over again about it isn't so much what happens in that muscle during the exercise as what does the muscle do after the exercise. When the exercise is all over, the muscle says, jeepers, I better recover. And what it does is, you see this glycogen stuff that I talked about up here, the stored sugar? It's gone, isn't it? You went out and you exercised for half an hour, it's gone. Because it burns up very quickly. There's not very much of it. After the exercise is over, the muscle perceives that as an emergency, and it says, the glycogen's gone. What if he has to do a sprint? An anaerobic sprint. And you can't do an anaerobic sprint unless you have anaerobic fuel, sugar, or glycogen is the big word, okay? So it says, emergency, emergency, and it tries real hard to replace that. And in the process of 10, 12, 15 hours after an exercise is over, you think, that's it, and you're in your car, you're off your care, your muscles all over your body are saying, recover, recover, recover. And they're working like crazy to take anything you eat, take it, put it in here, store it, hook it together, make those long chains. That requires calories. That's why people are hot for hours after exercise. People think it's because their muscles are still hot. That's not the reason. It's because there's chemistry going on in there, okay? That's another way of saying there's metabolism going on in there. From now on, after you, I mean, you're going to have to play this tape over, aren't you? Because there's a lot of chemistry here, a lot to think about. But I'm telling you, almost all the answers as to why we should do this kind of exercise and that kind of, I mean, I always start, people ask me questions, I start drawing my muscle cell, because that's where the answers are. Your muscle burns sugar and fat, and they're quite variable, and you can train them to do one or the other, depending on how you train. If you're fat, you say, just train me how to do the what is it, the left side of the diagram. That's what we're all about.
Thank you for watching Total Body Basics.